podcast. My name is Zach. If you haven't met me, I'd like to start by apologizing for my makeshift microphone. I have my wireless earbuds hooked up at a public store, so I'm dealing with some issues, but as a versatile interdisciplinarian, I'm able to adapt and overcome. Uh, so today we're talking about how our three minors might affect the definition of interdisciplinarian. And so my three minors that coincide with interdisciplinary studies are history, Spanish, and business. So I already introduced myself to a new employer. I already show myself, represent myself as a role player, and interdisciplinary studies will coincide very well with that, um, being so that I can show that I'm invested and disciplined and that I have many insights into how society works and how the world works. As the book states, page 58 of Repko's X and Berger's textbook, they define insights as scholarly contributions to the clear understanding of a complex problem, object, or text. So when I'm talking to a future employer, I can show them through examples or perhaps through a nice, interesting conversation. I can show them my insights in the world. And I've earned these insights by being well versed and studying and reading and traveling. Myself, I've been to the country of Panama and Honduras in Central America, as well as I've also now been to the West Coast many times in California. And as of tomorrow, I'll be flying to the East Coast. I'll be going to Washington, D.C. and Quantico, Virginia for my Marine Corps side of life, which is a little different than the student side of life. So when I'm speaking to a future employer, I would definitely talk about my role-playing abilities. And when I say role-playing, I mean that I can, come into a team and find a way to make myself useful, even if perhaps my job that I'm best at is already taken. I can subvert that and find a use for myself, keep myself busy. And that's similar to how interdisciplinary studies is that you take the best of everything and corroborate to make the best possible outcome. So if I was talking to a business person, I might mention how their financial and marketing decisions might be clouded by ignorance or just certain judgments that I myself, as a well-versed person, could solve for them. Or if it was Spanish-related job, I could talk about the cultural norms and biases that a company might have towards that population. And then history, having that background in history will help with market research. I could look and see how things had failed in the past, or perhaps how generationally something had already been tried and failed. So, yeah, interdisciplinary studies in the book was very interesting. I love the definitions I was given. Just to nitpick, um, in the 1997 Advancing Interdisciplinary Studies novel, I liked that they said that our new major addresses a topic that it might be too broad or complex to be dealt with adequately, but can be worked together and compilated in a compilation. I also like that another text called it a mode of thinking, where you're not so focused on one discipline that you've opened up your mind, like in Liberal Education and Integrative Learning by Carol Geary Snyder in 2003. She called integrative studies a art form, which I can totally understand. I think that it would be a fantastic art form that I can't wait to get better at. So with that in mind, I'd like to provide an example of how interdisciplinary studies might broach a subject and find a solution. So This is a clip from the Joe Rogan Experience, a podcast on Spotify. So, to corroborate the idea that interdisciplinarians bring an added advantage to the workplace, I am showing this clip from Joe Rogan's Experience's podcast, episode 15, with Bob Lazar, who worked at Area 51 and was a scientist who supposedly worked on UFOs. So here I'll show you an example of how an interdisciplinary workplace may have been able to solve an issue for them.
The first day at S4 was that, everything that I had read was apparently accurate.
What were you reading?
It was kind of an overview. This project was to back engineer the alien craft. And specifically, it was to try and back engineer and see if we can duplicate the technology with available materials. Now, to do this, they split the project into, many different pieces for several reasons. They do this on all classified projects. So nobody has the complete story, but they compartmentalize everything. Now, we had the power and propulsion system. So what the briefings they gave me were like a 1 or 2 page overview of some of the other projects that were going on, on the craft. The only reason they do that is just in case what you're working on is connected intimately in some way that we don't know of to one of the other projects. You have to know their, their existence. So, again, they have everything from metallurgy to, weapon potential of the craft. And these were all, essentially very short briefings, but mine was just power and propulsion. And there was another group working on one of the archways, and you could call that a screen, more or less.
So through that archway, it would maintain the solidity, the solid, whatever metal it was.
Yeah.
But you could see
through it. Yeah, it just
it?
became transparent. Yeah. I saw that happen once or twice before I left.
Did you ask any questions about what the fuck
No,
that
there's
was?
no asking
There's
questions.
no asking questions.
No.
But when you watch something become transparent and you realize it's still there, but you can now see through it.
Yeah, I mean, now that's not that impressive. We do have some liquid crystal materials that are like that. They have
I've seen that in
smart
bathrooms.
glass. Yeah, they call it smart glass. So this is just, and I don't know if the craft is made of, an advanced metal or a ceramic. It was cold to the touch. So, I would lean more towards a metal.
You're not allowed to ask questions.
No, they work on the buddy system. So I can only exchange ideas and talk to Barry. Now, this really interferes with science because science is based on free discussion. And ideally, you get a bunch of guys together, exchange ideas, work on problems, and that's how things move forward. But they're so over the top concerned about security, they split everything off and everybody becomes stagnant. It just destroys any of the progress you can make, or at least makes it go so slow. I think they wind up shooting themselves in the foot.
Which is probably why they arrived at this bottleneck that they needed to get this madman with a jet-powered Honda to come in and see what he could do.
I think that was an act of desperation. I think they wanted someone that thinks out of the box and let's just give this guy a try here, because they weren't, and
So
they might have done this.
That's our story. The fact remains that he was brought onto a team that they didn't work together, so they're essentially hamstrung by the fact that they can't corroborate their evidence and their research. They can't collaborate and bring it together as one. Now, that directly contradicts interdisciplinary ideals in which we would work together to find a common goal that is the best goal, which not just satisfies our needs, but the needs of society. So whether or not you believe Bob Lazar's story, or if you believe in UFOs, there is something to be learned here from this podcast, Joe Rogan Experience, episode 15.